Hey there. How you doing? Oh, I'm just sitting here making lunch. Got the dogs pitter-pattering behind me. But anyway, I was just sitting here thinking about our next Monster Monday video. And, well, I think just about everybody and their mother's heard of the Amityville horror story. If you haven't, no worries. I'm going to tell you all about it. So stay tuned. The Amityville Horror is a book by American author Jay Anson. It was published in September 1977. It would go on to inspire the 1979 film and then later the 2005 remake. So the book is based on the paranormal experiences of the Lutz family, George and Kathy and their 3 children. And later down the road, it led to some controversy, some lawsuits, and its truthfulness. A lot of people thought it was a hoax. I'm going to tell you a true story. On the south shores of Long Island, New York, on Ocean Avenue, sits a charming Dutch colonial in the neighborhood of Amityville. This is the place where a mass murder occurred. Ronald DeFeo Jr. murders 6 of his family members, all while they're sleeping in their beds. He was convicted of second-degree murder November 1975 and was sentenced to 6 terms of 25 years to life in prison. He later died March of 2021. So, in December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the house on Ocean Avenue. This was just about a month after DeFeo was convicted. 28 days later, they end up fleeing from the house because they claimed that they were being terrorized by paranormal phenomena in the house. So the book describes that the house had been empty for 13 months after the murders in the DeFeo home that happened in 1974.
Several people, a family.
Accused claims he heard voices coming from within the house.
George and Kathy Lutz bought their dream home on Ocean Avenue. At least that's what they thought it was. They got it at a bargain deal for that time of $80,000. It was a very, very cute Dutch colonial with 5 bedrooms and a gambrel roof. And bonus points, it had a swimming pool and a boathouse because it was located on a canal. Nice, right?
We're gonna have the greatest house.
It's beautiful. This is an amazing house. You are going to love it.
Holy, this is the deal of a lifetime. So, what's the catch?
So prior to moving into the house on Ocean Avenue in Amityville, George and Kathy Lutz had been married July 1975. Each had their own home, so naturally they wanted to have a home together instead of having separate houses. Kathy, she had 3 children from a previous marriage. Daniel, 9 years old, Christopher, 7 years old, and Melissa, who was 5 years old, and she goes by the name Missy. They even had a dog who was a Malamute Lab mix. I can't imagine what he looked like. And his name was Harry. During the first inspection, the real estate agent, because she's obligated to, disclosed that there had been murders in the house. She was afraid it was going to affect their decision. However, George and Kathy Lutz talked it over with each other, and they decided it wasn't going to be a problem.
There was a crime, a murder.
In the house?
So, the Happy Lutz family moved into their dream home December 18th, 1975. Here's something creepy. Much of the furniture that belonged to the DeFeos was in that house. In fact, they paid an extra $400 to keep that furniture. Yeah. A friend of George Lutz heard about the violent history of the house and insisted that he get it blessed. Now, George, a non-practicing Methodist, had no idea what it was going to entail. But his wife, Kathy, was a non-practicing Catholic, and she explained the process to him. George actually happened to know a Catholic priest and reached out to him to see if he would bless the home, and the priest agreed to come out and bless it. Now, in the book, the real-life priest was Father Picaro, but in the book, for privacy reasons, they named him Father Mancuso. I'm going to refer to the Catholic priest as Father Mancuso like they did in the book. Now, he lived at the Sacred Heart Rectory. He was a lawyer, he was a judge of the Catholic court, and he also was a psychotherapist. Now, on December 18th, 1975, the priest, Father Mancuso, arrived at the house on Ocean Avenue. While Kathy and George were unpacking, he went ahead and he carried out the rites. So when the priest flicked out his holy water and began to pray, he heard a very deep masculine voice demand him to. So naturally, Father Mancuso was so scared he ran out of the house. Now, the funny thing is he never said anything that day to Kathy and George. It wasn't until December 24th, 1975, that he reached out to George and advised him on the phone that they could not go in that room on the second floor. In fact, it was a room that Kathy was excited to use as a sewing room. And it used to be Jonathan and Mark DeFeo's room. Now, the phone call ended up getting cut short because of static.
Hello?
Hello, Kathy? Father Delaney, there's something very important.
Following his visit to the house, Father Mancuso started to develop very high fevers, and he had blisters on his hands that were similar to stigmata. Now, George and Kathy, for a while, they didn't have any kind of weird paranormal experiences happening at the house. But they go on to later say that it was as if each one of them lived in a different house. Another house blessing was performed by George and Kathy Lutz mid-January 1976. But what they experienced that night would turn out to be their last night in that house. In fact, it was so bad that the Lutzes declined to even tell anybody about it because they said it was just too frightening to share.
Bless and sanctify this house.
Open the door! It's not opening! I can't open it! George?
There's something evil in my house.
After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, they grabbed some of their belongings and they headed to Kathy's mother's house in Deer Park, New York. Now, they claim that something followed them there. In fact, in the last scene of Anson's book, there was green and black slime coming up the staircase towards them. Well, naturally, on January 14th, 1976, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children and their dog Harry left that not-so-charming Dutch colonial house on Ocean Avenue. In fact, they left all their belongings behind. The book was written after Tom Mossman, an editor at the publishing house Prentice Hall, introduced Kathy and George Lutz to Jay Anson. Kathy and George Lutz, they never directly worked with Jay Anson, the author of the book. In fact, they sent 45 hours of taped recordings recollecting their experience to him. The recordings that Kathy and George sent to Jay Anson were used as the basis of his book. Anson claims that the Little Amityville Horror was based on Dunwich Horror, written by H.P. Lovecraft, published in 1929. The story of the Amityville Horror would continue later in a series, and I'll go ahead and read you the series of books by John G. Jones. The Amityville Horror Part 2, 1982, Amityville, The Final Chapter, 1985, Amityville, The Evil Escapes, 1988, and then you had Amityville, The Horror Returns, 1989, and then in 1991, Amityville, The Nightmare Continues by Robin Carl was published. So naturally, there were disputes over the accuracy of the story, specifically the role of Father Pecoraro, who in the book was known as Father Mancuso. It had been given considerable attention because Father Pecoraro, was very adamant during a lawsuit in the 1970s that he was only ever in touch with the Lutzes by phone. In fact, he put it on an affidavit. He was clear he never entered the house. But then it gets confusing because you have other accounts where Father Pecoraro did enter the house, but reports that nothing ever happened there. It gets better because in 1979, Father Pecoraro, in silhouette form, began describing his experience when he went to the Amityville house to bless it. He was on a television show being interviewed called In Search of. Now he says that when he started blessing the house, he was slapped in the face and then heard a disembodied voice telling him to get out. There were claims that the locks, doors, and the windows were damaged, but the new owners who bought the house for $55,000, that was Jim and Barbara Cromartie, they said that they were all original doors, locks, and windows, and they didn't even look like they were repaired. The Cromarties even talked about the Red Room down in the basement. They said that the previous owners had to have known it was there because it had not been concealed in any way. In chapter 11 of the book, it claimed that the house was built on the site where the Shinnecock Indians abandoned mentally ill and dying, but that was rejected by the local Native American leaders. So there was a claim on January 1st, 1976 of cloven footprints in the snow. But researchers Ray Moran and Peter Jordan, they found out that there hadn't been any snowfall during that time. Even the neighbors reported that there was no unusual activity when the Lutzes lived at the house. Now, in the 1979 film, it depicted the police officers visiting the house, but during the time that the Lutzes lived on Ocean Avenue, the police were never called out there. Another thing to note is that at the time in Amityville, there wasn't a bar called the Witch's Brew. Now, I get it, with true stories and stuff like that being made into books and movies, they're always going to embellish. Of course, things are going to be exaggerated, made to look bigger. They may take things out and not use it. I mean, could that be the case with the Amityville horror story? Sure. Critics like Stephen Kaplan have pointed out that changes have been made to the book as it was reprinted to different editions. For example, Father Pecораro's car was a tan Ford and even had an incident with the hood flying up and hitting the windshield, where other books didn't, or other editions didn't. And then later on, the car ends up turning into a Chevy Vega, which was completely different from the original tan Ford. To me, that's like whoopee-doo. I don't care. In May of 1977, Kathy and George Lutz end up filing a lawsuit against a whole mess of people. Too many names for me to point out, but one of them had been DeFeo Jr.'s actual defense attorney. They alleged misappropriation of names for trade purposes, invasion of privacy, and mental distress. The lawsuit was heard by the Brooklyn U.S. District Court, and the judge was Judge Weinstein, who ended up later, September 1979, dismissing the claims of Kathy and George Lutz. On September 17, 1979, William Weber ended up writing in People magazine that, and this is what he's quoted saying, "I know this book is a hoax, recreated this horror story over many bottles of wine." This was referring to a meeting that Weber claims to have had with the Lutzes in order to outline the details of Anson's book. But even Judge Weinstein questioned and expressed his concern about Weber and Bernard Burton's conduct. He stated this: "There is a very serious ethical question when lawyers become literary agents." George Lutz maintained that most of the events that happened were mostly true. The Lutzes end up undergoing a polygraph test, and that was done in June of 1979. And the individuals who performed the polygraph test were of the top 5 polygraph experts in America. It was Chris Gugas and Michael Rice. And Rice, in his opinion, he says that the results did not indicate that Kathy and George were lying. The debate over the accuracy of the events that took place at that charming or not so charming Dutch colonial house on Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, still continues. Various owners of the house on Ocean Avenue all have reported that they have never had anything unusual happen. The Cromartys, Barbara and Jim, they said in the 10 years that they lived there, they never had any kind of weird incidents at all, other than people who want to take a look at the house. You know, fans of the movie and books. Well, the residents of Amityville, New York, are very annoyed by all the attention that they're getting because of the books and the films and the series and things like that. In fact, the house itself has gone under so many changes, so that way it wouldn't be recognizable. So I don't recommend going out there and knocking on the door asking to check the house out. You know, people deserve their privacy. And with that being said, that is all for now. Make sure you shine your light. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you're notified of new videos, and please comment below and tell me what you think. All right. Peace out, my friends, until we meet again.